All right, welcome everybody to the sixth installment of Yard and Company, a limited series of a limited series produced by Yard and Company, consisting of discussions about COVID-19's impact on place. As an urban design and planning firm that is wholly focused on using place to solve problems and help neighborhoods and districts grow, we've been spending a lot of time working with cities and districts respond to today's pandemic. ANCO was created to share and document these ideas with the folks that are pulling together, not to get us back to an old normal, but to relentlessly focus on pursuing the new one. Our previous guests have included retail and street experts, developers, district managers, crowdfunders, and community organizers that are creatively using their talents in new ways in response to the crisis as they evolve. My name is Joe Nickel from Yard and Company, and joining me is my partner, Kevin Wright. Our guest today is Sean Suder from Calfee Zoning, and today's topic is all about how zoning and regulation are changing or not to meet the needs presented by COVID. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you very much, Joe and Kevin. Thanks for having me.
So, Sean, as I mentioned in the opening, this is our sixth episode of this. And at the beginning of every episode, we like to just ask a very basic question of our guests about how are you, where are you, and how have you adjusted to this new normal now that we're about 12 weeks into it?
Oh, well, I'm here in my beautiful basement in my house and have been since March with my family, my immediate family, wife and here in Cincinnati. So I'm doing fine. Thankful to the technology that we have in place. It's been very seamless since the day I left my office in mid-March and started working from home. And I think the biggest change so far, and you all appreciate this too, is I haven't been on a plane in months, which is very unusual for the kind of consulting work that we do. And I haven't traveled like you all probably haven't in months. So I'm used to being a road warrior, getting out, visiting communities we work in, and that's been the biggest change. Is we're doing everything virtually right now, but we'll get back to it.
And you live on Cincinnati's east side. What's life in the neighborhood like? Are you finding that you and your neighbors are getting out, walking more, patronizing local businesses in new ways? What is life like in the neighborhood?
Yeah, that's a great question. We were just joking the other day that we have definitely gotten to enjoy the neighborhood. The neighborhood has probably been the best asset for all of us. And to describe it, it would be planning 101 because it was developed in 1920 to 1925 approximately. So all the houses are on small lots. We have front porches. Everyone has a front porch. The front porch has become such a big part of the neighborhood social fabric. And even though people have built decks onto the back and use their backyards, of course, small as they are, and we do too, if you want to see people and you want to, socialize with your neighbors, you do that on your front porch. So that's been really great. And I've spent more time on my front porch in the last 2 or 3 months than I have in the 16 years combined that we've lived in this house. So a lot of people walking. We were lucky to live in a neighborhood that's walkable to parks, restaurants, shops, and even during the shutdown, we're able to get carry out by walking up to our course. We live in a relatively good bikeable area. Can't always say that the drivers are that respectful, but we have wide enough streets and other trails and things. And so biking is picked up. Can't find a bike. Everybody's biking. So definitely some positive things coming out of this relative to our neighborhood.
Yeah. Great. And for those of our viewers who don't know Calfee Zoning, describe what your practice is like, what you focus on, and where you focus.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Calfee Zoning is a unique consultancy. We focus on zoning codes. That's what we do, zoning codes. We are lawyers and planners, and we marry those two disciplines together. And we create, our focus is crafting clear, usable, user-friendly, consistent, and defensible zoning codes that break down the barriers for communities to achieve their planning vision, their land use or development vision. So we are part of a subsidiary of a law firm called Calfee Halter and Griswold. We have offices throughout Ohio, in Indiana, and Washington, D.C. So we work primarily in the eastern part of the United States, working with communities to help them write good, modern, effective zoning codes that reflect their vision. And so we've worked anywhere from far west as Memphis, all the way up far north as Vermont, and as far south as the Atlanta area, and all points in between.
And through that practice, Sean, we like to say that this pandemic has accelerated a lot of the things that were kind of bubbling beneath the surface in communities across the country, kind of shedding light on new ways that we need to think about living and working in our cities. From a zoning perspective and a regulation perspective, what are some of the biggest immediate changes you've seen implemented, either on a kind of provisional basis to kind of get us through, or that are kind of permanently being rethought?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I think there are really three, to be a little bit more general, and then I'll get a little more specific. I think there really are three general conversations, three general main issues that have come into focus. One is equity, and we're seeing that play out in our streets every day, right? So lately, we know that zoning has created inequities. It has been used as a tool to create inequities. You think about zoning that is exclusionary, right? Minneapolis has been the center of zoning reform this year. It is now the center of policing reform and other social reform. And I say that because Minneapolis eliminated its single-family zoning, which, as we know, can have exclusionary impacts, can have impacts on affordability. And so I think that equity has certainly come into focus, and questions around how does zoning play a role in creating more equitable cities. I know the American Planning Association, other planning organizations have been looking into that, but I think recent events have certainly brought it into sharper focus. Second would be economic issues, affordability issues. We talked about single-family zoning, eliminating that, allowing some additional units in, allowing more density. But it's not just affordable housing. We're starting to see questions around affordable working. So what does that mean? Well, is there a way now to work virtually so we're saving money on commuting, we're saving money on parking, we're saving money on office space? Can we put more money into our businesses? Can we make more money from our businesses? Can we save more money as employees by working differently? So I think affordable housing certainly is a huge issue. Affordable working is also going to be and is a huge issue. And then environmental issues, whether that's environmental, like you think of the leafy green environmental, or if it's environmental relative to our health. What is a healthy living environment? What is a healthy working environment? And I think the answer to that has changed significantly in the last 8 weeks. And might be more what we're doing today, working from our homes, being able to take a walk in the middle of the day for exercise, eating with our family, not sitting in a sealed office tower with no fresh air. I mean, those, we're starting to see, these are the kind of things that we are looking to. And I think all of it is around the issue of people wanting more control over not only just their lives, but control over their environment, how they work, when they work, where they live, and what works for them, rather than being forced into a circumstance, being able to choose what that is. And I think we're also seeing, for different generations, there's a different answer to that question, depending on where you are in your life. And one size doesn't fit all. Specifically speaking, and those are general, but specifically to your question, specifically where we had a pivot, immediately we had a pivot on the public hearing side of zoning and for really all of time, we have required in-person hearings, both at the administrative and the legislative levels. And right now, we had to pivot and say, how are we going to continue the work of planning and zoning by doing it, virtually without in-person participation? And so I think changing the laws that was done very quickly in most states to relax the sunshine laws and allow for meetings to be held virtually, evidence to be submitted in variance hearings and other quasi-judicial hearings virtually, having public participation through Zoom and other virtual means, it's gone fairly well. And so I think that's been a huge pivot. That's a pretty obvious one. I think on the regulatory side, less the process side, I think also it's a relaxing of rules that may have been good rules back in the day, but are no longer necessary, and especially are getting in the way of us trying to figure out how to safely socialize. So those rules would be no use of the public sidewalk, right? Sidewalk dining, relaxing that, saying, you know what, you can use the parking lot. Parking lot isn't just for cars anymore. You can use those unused spaces. We know we have a ton of excess parking capacity in most places, especially in suburban places. Tons of surface parking. I call it land waste. So instead of wasting that land for asphalt and emptiness and cars, why not use it to allow us to socially distance, whether that be by having sidewalk sales instead of having people come into the store to shop. So we know it's safer to be outside and interact, and then whether it's dining. So I think the other piece of this is how important the public realm really is to us. I think that's been a huge thing that's come to light because of this crisis.
So Sean, you brought up a lot there.
Yeah.
As someone who has spent a lot of time thinking about zoning and researched the history of it, read about it, and you understand obviously how it's created racial disparities and equity issues, which you brought up and are at the forefront right now. From everything from the sunshine laws being kind of softened to this idea of, hey, now we can start allowing people to sell things on the sidewalk and the streets, which has been allowed, but now we're allowing them. I guess based on, I don't want to put you on the spot too much here, but based on the history of what you've read around redlining and whatnot, what do you think we can all be doing as professionals to ensure that as we make some of these laws permanent or think about how to change the monetization of public space, how we think about the use of public space, how can we ensure in your mind that all neighborhoods are able to take advantage of that? I mean, because you've also worked at a city, you've kind of seen behind the curtain on some of that stuff. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think it's really important to bring everyone to the table. Engagement is so critical, always has been, and is even more so now. It's bringing all those constituents to the table, but not just bringing them to the table, going to them, meeting them where they are, going into the neighborhoods and talking with folks, sitting down with folks, asking them, what do they want? What do they need? And bringing them into the conversation meaningfully, putting them in positions of of authority, whether it be in positions of influence, whether it be, questions, where the rubber really meets the road on a lot of things, or on advisory committees, steering committees. But what we can't do is just continue to listen to the same voices we've been listening to, because you're going to get the same answers, right? So we need to bring in new people and engage them. I think that's number one. Number two is, let's be a little bit more flexible on the zoning side. So we always say at Calfee Zoning, regulate only what matters. Okay, so our zoning codes are loaded with regulations that either have that have good intentions or not so good intentions, but they're loaded with regulations, and a lot of them don't have any purpose whatsoever. They're not achieving anything. They're not advancing whatever the vision is for that community. So if that vision changes on a dime, which it has in the last few months in a lot of places, that vision may be more, hey, we need to provide a space, a safe space for our citizens to congregate, whether it be eat out, shop, socialize, entertainment, whatever that may be. We need to create more safe places to do that. And safety isn't just around crime anymore, it's around contagion now. We have to be able to be flexible. So when something like this happens, it's prime time. It's high time to get back into your zoning code, to take a look at those things that aren't allowing your community to socialize and conduct business the way we have to during this time, and either make permanent changes, or at least, as Joe mentioned, temporary changes to relax those regulations that were mostly probably built around the automobile and cars. Now we have to focus on people, with car being secondary.
Well, and I've always thought of zoning as either playing defense or offense.
Yep.
And I think what gets me excited about this time, the silver lining, is it's forcing us to play offense on the regulatory side a little bit more. It's not about stopping things as much as it's about opening things up to, as you say, allow for spatial distancing and safety. So that's exciting to me. I guess my next question is, how do we think about that? Some of these things that we're temporarily changing or temporarily removing, what do you think it looks like to consider their permanency? Or do you think things just snap back into place when this is over?
Well, I think the conversation around zoning has changed a lot in the last decade. And even in the last 5 years since I've been consulting with communities, the conversation is much more about how can zoning advance the vision rather than, or as opposed to what it used to be, is how can zoning stop something we don't want? And you've seen that with the form-based code and other character-based or experiential type zoning codes, where the focus is, here's the outcome that we're looking to achieve, whether it be the development outcome or the open space outcome or the social outcome, whatever it might be. Here's what we're trying to get to, and here are the regulations that can get us there, versus here's what we don't want, here are the regulations that can stop someone's behavior. And I think that happened, with the whole smart code and form-based code movement, a decade ago. So that there's already momentum for that. We're already seeing that. So I don't think it's going to go away once COVID's over, as far as that outlook and that focus on people and character of place and experience versus, just stopping something, use segregation, if you will. I think it'll continue. The focus will continue, and I think there are some indications that while we are relaxing things for the new normal of social distancing, there are also some indications that the economy is not great, and some zoning officials and local government officials may be more inclined to kind of take whatever comes their way rather than pushing for better. And so we have to watch that. Anytime there's an economic downturn, places that need economic activity, jobs, that's going to be the main focus. So there's going to have to be a balance between, all of these things. And we put out some really great character-based, experiential-based zoning codes. In certain districts, then the community may come back to us and say, well, there's a business that wants to do this and it doesn't fit in with that, but we really need the jobs. And so that's going to be a little bit of a struggle going forward. That tension will be there going forward. But I think, generally speaking, this has enlightened people to the realm and how important that connection is.
Sean, so much of the industry is based on best practice. And so one of the questions I have for you is someone who's looking at zoning codes a lot, or ordinances that are being developed in response to COVID. What are one or two models that you have seen to be particularly effective that could be calibrated and mimicked in other places around how, say, for instance, a business can reuse its own space, like a parking lot, or encroach in a new way into the public realm, either through an umbrella of a special event permit, or even quasi-permanently reusing the sidewalk or the side street or what have you? Any particularly good models that you've seen?
I can't say I've seen any great models I could point to. I hear and read about things that are happening. A lot of it is relaxing existing licensing rules, or giving temporary exceptions and exemptions and waivers. What I haven't seen really is a comprehensive overhaul. Obviously, as we're writing zoning codes for communities, all of this is coming into play, and we're talking about these issues. But generally speaking, what I've seen so far is we're going to give you a temporary waiver. We're going to give you a license to do something that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. For example, carry liquor. And I've done that. That's been a pretty easy one, I think, to allow people to social distance and socialize. I think that there have been other, again, like I said, temporary waivers, temporary fixes, and it's going to create kind of an experiment to show people that using a parking lot, cordoning off a street, a part of a street, that's unused anyway for dining or shopping or socializing isn't going to have adverse impacts on the public health, safety, and welfare. We're already seeing that in places like where we live in Cincinnati, where they've cordoned off portions of the parking lanes and over the Rhine for dining. It's not crushing traffic. It's not killing parking.
It's enabling health.
I think I'm sorry?
It's enabling health, safety, and welfare rather than compromising it.
And that's the biggest thing, right? So there are a lot of, so all of our zoning laws are rooted in the protection of the public health, safety, and welfare. That's been turned on its head a little bit. It's going to be hard to argue public health, safety, and welfare for certain of these laws anymore when they actually promote, like you said, promote the public health, safety, and welfare. But a lot of this has been untested, Joe, and I think that's the key. A lot of the provisions, regulations that we have on the books now have never been tested.
Right.
And I think that's what we're seeing now as they're being tested. People are asking that question that we try to challenge our clients all the time to ask: why are we doing this? Why are we regulating this way? What public benefit does this have? Is the public benefit greater than the private burden, and vice versa? And why are we doing what we're doing? And so I think it's helping to test the assumptions that we had pre-COVID, and to challenge those assumptions. And I think we'll learn a lot through this of what works and doesn't work.
Yeah. The double-edged sword there, of course, is for the health, safety, and welfare argument. A lot more drive-throughs are going to be making the case that they are providing the health, safety, and welfare. So we'll have to keep a close eye on that. I want to pivot real quickly. Oh, go ahead.
I just wrote a letter to the editor in this month's Planning Magazine on that, because the April edition of Planning Magazine had a whole article about how drive-throughs were going the way of the dodo bird. They were going to go extinct. And as we've seen, the drive-through has actually been a really important part of conducting business in the COVID world. So I don't think drive-throughs are going anywhere. I think they do promote some level of health, safety, and welfare. However, we got to figure out how to do them well and how to do them better.
Yeah. Well,
sign of the lot, sign of the development.
Yeah.
And walk-ups, walkthroughs are going to be the new hot thing.
Yeah.
Which is cool. You know, walking up, transacting without going into a building, I think, is another thing. And I've started to calibrate some walkthroughs for various clients too.
Well, and the great thing about urbanism is that reusing or adapting a urban building for a walk-up is much easier than adapting it for a drive-through. And we've seen districts that have been able to capitalize on that. Sean, we have about 5 more minutes here. Before we let you go, I want to make sure that we talk about your favorite subject, and that is signage first, before we leave. And see what impacts COVID has on and off-site signage.
Well, it certainly, with the reduction in traffic, has made the billboard industry less attractive, right? So, or less profitable. That will be an end result that comes out of this as more people work from home. I think fewer people will be commuting on the roads. So certainly the billboard industry is going to take a hit. Billboard signs are going to be less important, less prominent. But as far as other types of signage, you know, if we're moving to more walkthroughs and walkable enterprises, you'll need more signage at the pedestrian scale. So signage more at the eye level rather than signage to attract speeding cars. If, you know, we are posting more temporary signs and more health and safety signs than we ever have, but those generally aren't that regulated. It's really, you know, what are we trying to attract? Are we trying to attract a speeding car? Are we trying to attract a biking customer or a walking customer? And those are different types of signs. Smaller signs, and signs that are illuminated differently, and signs that are located differently than they have been traditionally. So that's kind of an interesting subject. I haven't seen a whole lot of action in that arena as far as my clients go, but I think that's something, one of the assumptions that we're going to have to test.
Sean, 60 seconds or less on this answer, but I want to get it in. It feels as if we're going to wake up from all of this and we're going to have a lot of problems to solve. One in particular is vacant retail. What do you think I know some of the folks who are on here, city employees who work in zone, they should be doing now to be thinking about that moment? And what regulations should they be removing or thinking about removing to allow for just creative interventions, pop-up retail? I mean, it kind of ties into your signage requirement. How can they best get out of the way?
Huge. If your community has a lot of retail or single-use office parks, office buildings, most communities, zoning code to build in flexibility of use. The other thing that this crisis has illuminated is how economically unsustainable the single-use property is, or the single-use zoning is. We need to be more flexible because we need to move on a dime. when world events force us to. And as we're seeing now, if I own an office building in an office park that is zoned for office and office only, and I know that more people are going to be working from home going forward, I'm going to need to figure out what to do with that property. Am I going to invest in it? Am I going to try to reuse it somehow for some adaptive reuse, or am I going to give it back to the bank? And those are the tough issues that are going to be tough questions and decisions that are going to be facing our landlords. So I implore the local governments to get out ahead of this, start taking a look at your communities and saying, okay, where do we have this kind of single use zoning that is not going to be economically sustainable, and how can we help these property owners to adaptively reuse these properties for something that is economically sustainable?
Well, in the inverse, really quickly, the inverse of that is if you have a small company and you've been leasing a floor or half a floor of an office building downtown, you may want to go move it into a warehouse building or garage building in a neighborhood business district near your home or near where your employees live.
You may want to create an accessory dwelling unit behind your house that allows you to work from there. Exactly.
Right. Cool.
Yeah, this whole idea about creating a 15-minute neighborhood where everything can be met within a 15-minute walk or short bike ride. The idea of pocket neighborhoods, reusing large vacant commercial sites. We had a home builder actually call us recently who's used to doing 600-acre tracts, is starting to reposition 10-acre sites in urban areas, picking up on the very trends that you're identifying, Sean. Well, I think we're going to have to stop it there. We're getting multiple, or at least one request to keep this conversation going. We're going to have to cut it off there, but I encourage that listener to follow up with Sean directly, or just watch this video over and over and over again until that urge is met. A few housekeeping notes. We are taking next week off. We will be virtually participating in this year's Congress for New Urbanism, which was supposed to be in Minneapolis. We talked a little bit about Minneapolis. Yeah, I know Yard's got a few sessions there. Sean, I don't know if you're going to be involved, but hopefully we'll see some folks there through our screens. But then we'll be back 2 weeks from today on June 17th with Lauren Hood from Deep Dive Detroit, who will be talking about her experience in that city, doing community development and public engagement, maybe picking up on some of the themes that Sean raised today. And so with that, thank you for everybody for participating. Sean, thank you for carving out time in your day to meet with us, and we look forward to seeing everybody again soon. Thank you.